Blessed be, welcome to the Circle of Heka. I'm Lady Amaris. So I've had a couple of people asking me about different spells, how things work, that they're just starting out and it's sensory overload. They're looking at someone who's doing a video on this and saying you must do it this way, and then they're looking at another video and that person says no, you've got to do it this way, and in the end becoming really confused and not actually knowing what to do, where to go. And that can be something that happens to anyone when you're starting anything. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's spellcraft, whether it's learning how to crochet, whether it's learning a running style. You want to become a runner, and everyone's got their own running style. Everyone's got their own thing. It's and spells I equate a lot to cooking. Everyone has their own recipe on spaghetti. Everyone has their family recipe or their own personal recipe. And I remember once when I was younger, and a group of us went away on holiday, and it was like, oh yeah, we'll make spaghetti. We'll all have a great big spaghetti's easy. You can make a whole load of it. Everyone can have some of it. Now the thing is that we had a group of girls who all had their own separate recipe on their own family recipe on how spaghetti was cooked. We did it this way. Sarah's family does it this way. Jenny's family does it this way. Or each family has their own little way of doing it. You've got to you've got to do the onions first, or no, you don't do the onions first. You do this first. Whatever. So everyone has their own way of doing something. It's still spaghetti. And but it has their own little nuances. Things have to be done first this way, as opposed to another set of rules another way. Now, that's not saying that one person's spaghetti is better than another's. It may well be. It may taste a little different. It may have that little bit of difference in there. But as I said, at the end of the day, it's still spaghetti. So the trick is to find one recipe. So when you're starting off, what do I do? So you look around at a few spaghetti recipes, and then you look at the one and you think, oh, that doesn't look too bad. I think I can do that one. And so you take that and you do it. You try it out and you see what it tastes like. And then once you're proficient in doing that recipe, then you can kind of either branch out and look at other people's recipes, or you can start putting your own little touches in there. Oh well, I'll just add a little bit more. Well, I like this type of cheese as opposed to the cheese that's recommended in the recipe. So I'll swap this out and put this in. So you're starting at a base, and then you are developing that and putting your own little extra bit on there. And you see that a lot with people who are saying about spells and doing spells on YouTube, or this is what I do. Use it as a base and put your own little twist on it, put your own little bit in it, because then that's the magic that's your own, that's specifically your own. Now, all of the things that you find on YouTube, you think of them as a cookbook. It's as a recipe. This is the recipe that Esmeralda uses, and there's another recipe that Fuzzy Wuzzy Witch or whatever it uses. Each one has their own recipe, and that works for them, that their own style, and that's what ultimately spells are. Spells are recipes that people have cooked up themselves and that work for them, and then the grand grimoires are all spells and series of recipes on what works for them. Family recipes, family spells are all ones that have worked for them and tried and trued, because it has worked. It's worked for them, but it may not actually work for you. There is lots of times that you may do a recipe from a cookbook and it just doesn't turn out, and it could be for various things. It could be that you just weren't feeling it. You didn't have all the the specific ingredients, so it wasn't going to be exactly the same. And there is that also that special little flair. It's the same thing as you can have 3 chefs or three people doing the same, exactly the same recipe, having exactly the same ingredients, exactly the same environment, all of those things. But the difference is that maybe one is a chef, one is just a just some person off the street, and another person is someone who puts love and puts themselves into every piece of food that they make, and each one is going to have a different taste, even though all of the parameters have been the same, all of the ingredients is exactly the same, all sourced from the same place, it's all using the same kitchen, all using the same utensils, all of those sorts of things. There's been nothing left to any variance. The only difference is the person working the recipe. So it's using a base and then having that trial and error, and so you start to amass your own spells, your own ways of working. Every witch has their own spell book of things that have worked for them, that they've tried it and it's worked, and then they've tried it again and it's worked again, because they've done exactly the same thing at exactly the same time. They've followed their recipe. But that doesn't mean that that spell is going to work for everyone. It doesn't mean that that spell is going to work for you or for me. It just means that that's the spell that has worked for them. Then you have other spells that may work for anyone, anytime. Those are those kind of generic kind of spells that will work for everyone. So when you're starting, I know that it can be really overwhelming, really daunting. One person says you've got to do it this way, another person says no, you've got to do it this way. Everyone's saying that the other person is wrong, but ultimately you've got to go with your gut. You've got to go with what feels right, and you've just got to pick something and do it. And once you've picked something, you've picked up maybe a spell that someone else has written out, because you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start, you're not confident enough to make up your own spell by after reading a bunch of spells and getting the kind of gist as to how a spell is formed and how it works. You then so you pick a spell and do it. The thing is that once you do it, don't go and start second guessing yourself. Don't go, oh, maybe I should have done what such and such has said, and do it that way, and then you get into your mind that you've done something wrong. And when you think that you've done something wrong in your spell, then you start to unravel your own spell. You start to work against your own spell, and then you become it's almost you undo your spell, you unmake your spell. So your spell could have been going off and working quite well, but because that doubt has been put into yourself, because you're not confident enough in your skills, you're not confident enough in the spell that you've picked, and then someone else has said something and you're like, oh, so then you start to undo your own spell. And that's the main thing when you're starting out, is don't undo your own spells. Basically get out of your own way and let the spell do the work. Give it time to work as well. That's the other thing. It's like if you're doing a spell, say it's a love spell, don't expect that the second the candle has burnt down, or the second that you've said so mote it be, or whatever it is, that they're going to come knocking on the door and ask you to marry them. It's not how it's going to work. Your spell is going to work in mundane ways. It's going to set up little opportunities for you to get closer and closer to your goal. So you have to have your eyes open and ready for those opportunities when they arise, but also and to recognize them. But also you need to just let it go, forget it. They say forget about it. and it's the same as, you know, love happens to those that, you know, when you least expect it, and that is because you're letting the spell do the work. You're not you're not continuously worrying about it. You're not continuously going and thinking about it. You've gone off and you've done it. And I've said in previous videos, it's the same as when you go and you're boiling water. You don't sit there and watch the kettle boil. There's that old thing, a watched pot never boils, or a watched kettle never boils, because you're focusing on it. You are time moves really slowly because you want it. But if you're off doing something else, time goes really quickly, and then before you realize it, oh, the water's boiled. So it's that set and forget. You turn on the kettle. You've got like the electric kettle. You turn it on. You walk away, and you know that it is going to go and boil when it's ready. Okay, so that's the same thing with this spell. You've done it. You've said it. Then go off and do what you need to do, knowing full well that that spell is now going through the process of manifesting, and you'll be surprised just how quickly your spells will start to manifest when you do that. When you're continually thinking about your spells, you're starting to unravel and undo your spells, but you're making that spell take longer and longer to go. So it's that catch-22 of, you want your spell to happen really fast, and you keep thinking about it, but at the same time that you keep thinking about it, it's going to take longer. So yeah, stop it. So have confidence in yourself. Pick something, make a decision, pick something and go with it, and have the confidence, and know that that spell is going to work. You've picked it, you know what you're going to do, you've got all the bits and pieces, you've worked that spell, you've given it everything that you possibly can, and give it time to work. And that's all I can kind of say is, yes, look around, but ultimately you have to start making a decision as to what it is. You looked around, now you have to put in that filter. You have to distill it down and to something that works for you and feels right for you, and stick with it for longer than 5 minutes. It's like most things. You don't become a master in 5 minutes. I watched a video the other day of a guy who's skateboarding, and he wanted to learn a trick, and it took him 2 years of constantly doing and going over and over, and he hurt himself more times than you can imagine. He took himself, he was in the hospital lots of times because he'd literally broken some ribs trying to do this trick, but he stuck at it because it's something that he wanted to do. And yeah, it took him 2 years before he could master it, before he could actually do the trick that he wanted to do. And that's another thing that many people do. If it doesn't happen straight away, if they're not a master of it straight away, then it's junk, and I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to do it. This is shit. This is who wants to do this? You've got to stick at it a little bit and find what works for you. So you've picked a spell, it hasn't really worked for you, or hasn't worked the way you would like it. So you've got to dissect it and think about what it is that happened. So you've got to make sure that you've written everything down and find out what it is that happened. Has it been the fact that you've been thinking about it for too much and you've hurt your own spell, or you weren't concentrating, or your visualizations weren't quite correct, or you didn't word the spell the way you should have, and you actually got X when you should have gotten Y. All of those sorts of things. And then you can start to work and find out what works for you, the ways that work for you, the styles, the techniques that work for you. But that takes time, that takes practice, and so just keep at it. Make it fun, and try not to be overwhelmed by so much information. Just find something and stick with it, and you'll be fine. Bless it be. If you like this video and want to see more, please click on the links provided. If you think this witchcraft thing may be for you, please subscribe.
Blessed be.